Hello, how are you doing? I have a quiet weekend coming up, so I'm looking forward to some relaxing reading time and diving into this pile of new books I have and just reading what takes my fancy. And these are a mixture of some titles that publishers have kindly sent me, others I've bought myself, so I'm going to discuss why I'm so interested in all of these books. And I'd love to know if you have read any of them or if you're interested in reading any of them now. Please let me know about that in the comments below. Also, this video is very kindly sponsored by serious readers who create excellent reading lights, so more on them in a few minutes. But first off, I want to talk about a new to me author who I've not read before, but now I have a whole group of his titles and I'm really keen to start exploring his work because I was very kindly invited to the ceremony for this year's David Cohen Prize. This is an award which has been going since the early 90s. It's awarded every other year to a UK or Irish author for their body of work, not just a single title. And so many great writers have won this award before, like Doris Lessing and Julian Barnes and Hilary Mantel. 2 years ago, it was awarded to Colm Tóibín. And this year, it was awarded to the author John Burnside. And it was so exciting to go to the ceremony because one of the judges for this year's prize was Hermione Lee, the great biographer. And so I saw her give a speech and announce the winner as John Burnside. And John Burnside is a Scottish author who writes in many different genres, in essay and poetry and prose and memoir. And yeah, he's been writing and publishing for many years. I think he's only the second Scottish author to win this award. Also Muriel Spark won the award. But yeah, I've not read John Burnside's work before, and he gave such a great speech and read some of his poems aloud and also the context of those poems. He spoke so passionately about literature and what it's meant to him in his life and the meaning and power of it. And so yeah, the prize kindly sent me a number of his books to start exploring his work. And now I'm really looking forward to it, especially because this is a whole mixture of different kinds of literature. So there's a memoir called I Put a Spell on You, in which he describes how he was entranced by the Nina Simone song, and he kind of riffs off from that to explore both his personal past and issues to do with mental health and people he's encountered in his life. It's meant to be so powerful. There's also his memoir about his father called A Lie About My Father, and about the very tense relationship they had with each other, how his father had this very masculine sort of image he tried to imprint upon his son, which he didn't really agree with. And so yeah, it's about that very uncomfortable relationship and evoking the memories of his father. There's also, because he's a very accomplished and well-respected and poet who's been won many different poetry awards over his life. So I'm keen to start exploring his poems, and there's a collection of his selected poems. I think this was published in 2006, so looking at a lot of his early poems, or his kind of greatest hits of his early poems, which I think will be wonderful to explore. And I'm not someone that reads a lot of poetry, but the poems that connect with me, when a poem connects with me, I feel like, wow, this is incredible, and I think this could be an author that writes poetry like this. So yeah, I'm looking forward to exploring this. There's also a more recent collection of his poems called Learning to Sleep, in which some of the poems describe his own wrestling with insomnia issues that he's had throughout his entire life, and but also his experiences sort of evoking the spirits of some people from the past, both personal to him and authors and literary figures like like Arthur Rimbaud. And yeah, so sounds like a beautiful, and this has such a lovely cover to it. And I've actually had this novel on my shelf for years called Ashland and Vine. When it first came out, I got a copy of it because I thought it sounded so interesting, but it's one of those books that I just put on my shelf and I thought I'll get to it one day, and I just never have read it. But now, yeah, I'd really like to finally read it. So this is a novel about a woman who is really struggling with issues to do with alcoholism, and she meets a much older woman who she wants to interview as part of this kind of documentary. And so it's about her experiences with her, getting her to tell her stories, and how this older woman wants her to give up, this younger woman to give up alcohol. And so to do that, kind of barters with her and says, I'll only tell more of my stories if you stop drinking. So it's looking about this relationship and issues, yeah, to do with alcoholism. And then finally, there's a fairly recent collection of essays called Aurochs and Auks. And in this, John Burnside looks at issues to do with mortality and evolution and extinction and the sort of circular nature of that by examining the lives of a number of different creatures, some of which are extinct now, and like the great auk. And I know about the great auks because I read before this wonderful collection of short stories by Jesse Greengrass, and one of those stories was about explorers that go onto an island, discover this bird, which called the great auks, and how they gradually killed all of these birds. And so this is a bird that went extinct because of humans intruding upon their territory and killing them. And so he's looking at these issues that are slightly personal, like to do with like his own life and issues to do with mortality, and connecting that with a larger like cycle of life and where humans fit in within larger species in the world. And yeah, it just sounds so interesting. So I'm really looking forward to reading his work. I'd love to know if you have read any of his work before and where you would suggest that I start. As I mentioned in the beginning, this video is very kindly sponsored by Serious Readers, a company that creates superb high-quality reading lights for indoor use, like this one right here. This is my trusted reading companion, my high-definition table light that I've been using for over a year now, and that I've been talking about a lot recently because I use it so much at this time of year when it gets darker much sooner in the afternoon, and using overhead light feels way too harsh and it doesn't illuminate the page well enough. But using the light from this lamp feels warm and natural, and it's just a joy to read under. And let me show you how handy it is. So the neck is very easy to move and to direct it exactly where you want it to be. The light, you can make it brighter or weaker if you want to, and adjust the beam width to be directed exactly where you want it, which is especially handy when you're trying to read in the middle of the night next to your partner and not wake them up. So I know we're getting into the festive season, and I think this would make an excellent present for a reader in your life, or if you want to buy it for yourself. So I'll put a link in the description below so you can check them out on the website. And if you decide to buy one, I have a special offer for you. Be sure to enter the offer code SR454, as this will save you £100 on a high definition light and give you free shipping. So if you're looking for an excellent new reading light to give or to use for yourself, I'd really recommend Serious Readers. Now back to the books. A recent novel that I'm really keen on reading is The Nursery by Szilvia Molnar. And this is a story about a very hot August in New York City, and a woman who is a new mother, and her experiences living in a cramped apartment with her newborn, and trying to learn how to become a mother and communicate with her newborn. And so her feelings of claustrophobia living in this environment, and also her connection with a neighbor who is suffering from a lot of health issues and is similarly confined in this apartment, this sweltering apartment building in New York City. There's also a new issue of Granta magazine, which focuses all on Germany. That includes a number of German authors, German artists, or writers that are reflecting on the country. So there's a section by Clemens Mayer, who was listed for the International Booker Prize earlier this year. And there's the author Nell Zink writing about German men and the character of German men. And I just always love flipping through and reading different sections of Granta magazine, because yeah, it's just such a mixture of different photography, pieces of art, poetry, short stories, and extracts from larger works. I also have two new novellas by a Japanese author called Hiroko Oyamada, and this is being printed, this proof is being printed by Granta Publications in such an inventive way. So first off, just published in November is this novella called The Factory, which follows three different individuals who have three different jobs at this strange factory, and we follow their perspectives over time, but gradually they realize they don't understand why they're working there, or what the purpose of the larger purpose of this factory is. It's meant to be quite a Kafkaesque type story, but then this is why this publication is so inventive, because you flip it around and on the other side is the other novella, which isn't going to be published until April of next year. But yeah, just I think it's so fun that you can like flip one way or the other, and both are printed like upside down on the within the book. So this novella is called The Hole, and it follows a woman who moves out to the countryside in with her in-laws, and there very surreal things start to happen, and there's a elusive hairy creature that is lurking around. It sounds very sinister and intriguing. There's also a new collection of poems called The Many Hundreds of the Scent by Shane McCrae, and these are poems which meditate on personal mythology, but also larger mythology, like connecting Greek mythology to our present day and the author's present-day circumstances. And the author has such an interesting life story, really tragic and awful story, that he was born to a white mother and a black father, and when he was very young, his maternal grandparents kidnapped him and raised him for many years, and they were very racist, very cruel to him, and they denied his father's existence. So he had no connection to his black heritage for many, many years. So he reflects on this experience in his poems, and this sounds like such a powerful collection. I have a very intriguing sounding and experimental new novella called Getting By in Tligolian, and this is about a woman in a fictional city-state, which in many ways feels very idyllic living there, but it is run by dictators, and they have very severe and strict laws and forms of punishment, and also people aren't allowed to leave from there. And it's written in a way that it's almost like a guide to this city-state and to the language, but through the structure of this guide, you get to learn about the larger story going on in this place. The Leftover Woman by Jean Kwok. This is a novel about a woman living in China who gives birth to a daughter, but she has a very controlling husband, and she was told after the birth of her daughter that her baby died, but in fact she didn't die, and her husband sent the baby away to America to be adopted. And so we follow her story as she discovers the truth of this and goes to try to find her daughter in America, but it also follows the woman in America who adopted this daughter. So it's about these two women's journeys and their connection with each other and this horrific dilemma that they find themselves in. And finally, over the winter months, I kind of fancy reading a detective novel, and a new one that I'm keen on that I received this proof of is called Deep Dark Blue by Seraina Kobler, and this is set on Lake Geneva. I visited Lake Geneva for the first time earlier this year. It was so beautiful, so I kind of fancy fictionally being transported back there, but through this kind of dark story about a woman who's a female detective working in the maritime police force on Lake Geneva, and the body of a doctor is discovered, and this is a doctor who was treating this female police officer and a number of other women. So she investigates this case and what was going on with this doctor. So it sounds like a fun read for kind of the winter months. So those are all the new books that I want to talk about. Like I said, I'd love to know if you've read any of these titles or this author, John Burnside. Please let me know about that in the comments below, and if you would recommend them, or if you have received any other new books recently that you're really keen on reading. I would love to hear about that as well. But I hope you're doing well and reading good things, and I'll speak to you again soon. Bye-bye.